Take up the broken sword of your father
and strike down the darkness.
Amen. Greetings, you wonderful warriors of the broken sword. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Nick.
And we are the Gosslings, a digital speakeasy of free thinkers, explorers of the esoterica, Christian writers, and general purveyors of comedy buffoonery.
Indeed we are. Leaning into that comedy lately. The world is so depressing, I feel like I have to laugh.
Laugh till you weep till there's nothing left but to laugh at your weeping. In the end, it's all the same.
What is that from?
Frederick Buechner, his book Godric.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
A literary reference, and I did not get it.
We're writers. Yeah.
Well, you are.
I mean, who sold more books than whom?
Well, mine were easy to read.
Well, that's true. Mine are not known for their ease of literary ingestion. So.
Mine are for like second, third graders.
Yeah, well, so was Harry Potter. So you know,
that's true. That's true.
He's on to something.
By that standard, we're both failing miserably. Yeah.
And that's why we're here tonight, folks, because we are here to broadcast our quarterly interviews with Stephen Pressfield.
That's right.
We call them Fireside Chats with Uncle Steve. We will get to a little bit of description more in a second, and then we'll jump into the interview. But first, we'll do just a couple of real quick preliminaries.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd appreciate it if you guys would subscribe. Take up the broken sword of your finger, strike down the subscribe button, and flick that bell.
Flick it like a mosquito.
Yeah.
Like a malaria-carrying mosquito.
Yeah.
Just
wait till it sucks a little blood first, and then make it.
Yeah, make it pay.
Yeah.
Yeah, make that bell pay.
Yeah, make that bell pay.
Be a true constitutionalist and turn that YouTube bell into a Liberty bell.
Crack that Liberty bell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I like that. We got to do that more. I like that.
And then singing it Tartaria style. The healing power of bells.
Let's talk about our sponsor.
Yeah. Giordani Jovanovic. Hair and skincare products made by real men for real men. Or as I like to say, be as sexy as you are deadly. Give 007 a run for his money. Awaken your inner John Wick with Giordani Jovanovic. Hair and skincare products made by real men for real men. Go to JiordaniJovanovic.com and get something special for the man in your life or for yourself. And do it now.
Do it now.
Do it.
Do it now. All right. Now we get to the goods.
Yeah, right to the meat, baby.
Absolutely. We had the honor of interviewing Uncle Steve once again.
Yeah.
And BJ was with us.
Yeah.
And they had a really great connection. I was challenged, as always, talking to Uncle Steve. This is actually a pretty emotional interview for me. Like, it really, it really made me think deeply about some things.
Really?
Yeah.
How so?
Yeah, he talked about being in the wilderness and feeling when you're there that, what would you call it, tenacity? Not even tenacity. You're just doing it for the love of doing it. And when you're in the wilderness, it's
for the
kind of
passion.
Like you're doing something for the passion, but you're not so fully committed to it that you understand that this is what you're supposed to do. And when you get off track and you start doing other things, that's really what the wilderness is. When you're kind of lying to yourself about who you are.
Yep.
And coming through that, coming out of the wilderness and embracing really what you're called to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it always feels like you're starving yourself with empty calorie life when you're straying in the wilderness.
Yep.
But and it's usually a self-inflicted wound. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes, society or your environment or your life puts you in that position, against your will, and you're sort of forced to wander in the wilderness.
Yep.
Oh, yep. I was wondering where that echo is coming from. Yeah, you get the mantra twice. Sorry about that. So, you go into the wilderness because of resistance, because you aren't fulfilling your passion, arguably what the Lord has put you here to do. You may be here to write those books or to start that business or to run that marathon, and who knows what's going to come out of that. And it not necessarily is quantifiable.
Yep. And resistance, if you let it win, it drives you into the wilderness.
It drives you into the wilderness, or your life and your circumstances may just drive you into the wilderness. The interesting thing about the wilderness, though, is that there is almost this mandatory nature of it as you go through your artistic hero's journey. It's almost like it's unavoidable if you want to be totally in. It's sort of like you have to, in the military, when you join the military, they break you down and then they build you back up. They reshape you. When you get saved, you turn your life over to Christ, and you sort of remake yourself as best you can for the rest of your life in Jesus's image.
Right.
Addicts, that you hit rock bottom, and you don't really change until you hit rock bottom.
And there's a rebuilding. It's not like overnight you're a different person.
No.
Everything is just different. It's like this. You slowly start to change when you realize the direction you're supposed to go, who you're supposed to be, or who you're supposed to be like. And over time, you evolve into that.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is a rock bottom. There is a point where you have to surrender.
Yeah. And Stephen Pressfield lived that. A lot of people would recognize Stephen Pressfield from 2 books, The Legend of Bagger Vance, which got turned into a very successful movie, and The War of Art. He has written a plethora of other books, whether it's motivational nonfiction, or whether it's fiction, especially his historical ancient Greek warfare fiction. Great stuff. I celebrate his entire catalog.
Celebrate the man's entire catalog.
Yeah, I mean, truly, and especially with Steve, like he's so consistent in his writing style. But his latest book was an autobiography, a memoir called Government Cheese, and it was an expose of the wilderness.
Yeah, that was his wilderness.
For 30 years.
30 years.
He lived in the wilderness, just doing all these different jobs, trying to write, struggling, failing, resisting writing, letting resistance just kick his ass, And it took a long time for him to sort of figure it out and figure himself out. He's such, like a well-grounded, awesome place. So anyways, as we've discussed before, we do these once a quarter with Steve where we get together. And, Stephen Pressfield calls himself Uncle Steve to us, and we happily adopt that.
Yeah, we happily
We're
accept.
so honored.
We accept.
Yeah, we are beyond honored. And, we just talked to him about writing, because at our heart for the Goslings, we are writers. So we try to do that for other creatives. You don't have to be a creative to benefit from Stephen Pressfield's motivational work. This wilderness thing it's across the board, just like resistance is across the board, whether you have a day job, whether you have family problems, whether you're trying to be an entrepreneur, or whether you're trying to do something creative, doesn't matter. These are universal concepts, and Steve is generous enough to spend time with us exploring them. And we're very honored. So, I mean, for me personally, these are my favorite interviews that we do on this channel. So
that was a good overview.
Oh,
good
thanks.
Overview. I'll go ahead and play the video. We'll jump into it with Uncle Steve, and we will see you guys on the back end.
Yep. Enjoy. Fireside chat with Uncle Steve, The Wilderness. Vertical punch.
Your YouTube feed is crap. Stop wasting your time watching bot-boosted shills and self-appointed gurus cloying for your attention. Instead, join the Goslings interview live stream and podcast. The Goslings, a dark-lit digital speakeasy of free thinkers. A super chat of radical truth-seeking wizards who eat trolls for second breakfast. Topics that'll make your mama's hair stand on end. Ideas that'll make your pastor's knees knock. Guests that will illuminate the hidden chambers of your mind. And interviews that strike down the darkness. Welcome to the Goslings.
I know we want to talk about the wilderness a lot. We've been watching your series on Instagram about the wilderness, and I'll tell you, it's been like church for me. Your videos are like sermons, man. They're amazing. I know Nick has a bunch of questions about them. But before we do, because I think this will be a shorter topic, can you maybe tell people about the upcoming daily Pressfield that you're working on?
Okay. This is the next book of mine that will be coming out, called The Daily Pressfield. And kind of a crazy title. It actually came from Ryan Holiday. It was his idea.
Okay.
Nice. And the gist of it is it's like one of those 365-day books. Each chapter is like 1 page long. And it's something that you could, start on January 1st or any first day of whatever, your birthday, whatever. And it takes you through an entire year of kind of Pressfield-esque wisdom, you know. But the way the book is sort of structured is from day 1 through day 365, it would take you, if you were starting a project, say you were going to start a novel, that it sort of takes you kind of from day 1 all the way through it, you know, anticipating the various places along the way when resistance, capital R resistance, will rear its ugly head, and sort of anticipating that and kind of trying to help you, you know, go through those blocks and those tough moments, you know.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a story. I mean, it goes kind of from A to Z all the way through 365 days. So that's the Daily Pressfield coming out. We're bringing it out for Christmas, and like the last couple of books that I've done, we're trying to kind of sell them as or at least a big option is going to be kind of a premium package that will come, you know, with extra stuff.
Cool.
So it's not just a book. It'll be a signed book, and it'll be with a bunch of goodies and reinforcing stuff.
I can't wait to get this. I want to get I can already think of like half a dozen people that I need to get this for when it comes out.
Do you have a tentative time of year that you're planning on this being available?
Oh yeah, like for Christmas, you know, Nick. It'll be.
Oh wow, that's soon.
We're hoping it'll be like a gift type of thing, you know.
Man, fantastic.
So you're not going to call it the Pressfield Daily Devotional?
We thought about that one, but you know, it's still a little too long.
All right. That's great. I can't wait to. I can't wait to read it. Man.
Daily
That's fantastic.
Pressfield coming out in Christmas, just in time. Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
Let me say one other thing about it. So now everybody won't even need to buy this. Like Ryan, it's sort of patterned after Ryan Holiday's The Daily Stoic.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did in that book was each little chapter would kind of start off with a quote from a famous Stoic, you know, from Epictetus or Marcus Aurelius or whatever, you know, like a 3-line quote at the top of a chapter. And then the bottom half of the chapter would be Ryan Holiday commenting on it, you know, and sort of bringing it into the modern world and telling you sort of how to view it. So I'm sort of doing the same thing. Like there might be a quote at the top of a chapter from Gates of Fire, or from The Profession, or from The War of Art, or something like that. And then the second half of that little chapter would be, you know, a little bit of an interpretation of it, you know, for the moment of the story.
That is so cool to do that as the writer of those works, because there's always this argument of like, what does the writer mean when he said this in his thing? And here you are giving commentary on it sets a definitive precedent of like, no, this is kind of how it applies to this sort of thing. And this is,
I hope it works. We'll see.
we'll see. Yeah, we'll find out on Christmas, Steve. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I can't wait for that to come out. Well, dude, Nick has some awesome.
Yeah, if you don't mind.
And I know.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for, Nick. Let's go for it.
So I know we touched on the wilderness a little bit last time we interviewed you, and in some of your more recent presentations about the wilderness, in one of them you said that the wilderness passage that the artist goes through is really an estrangement from who they really are. Can you kind of explain that a little bit?
Okay, let's see if I can do this. What I mean by a wilderness passage is those times in our life, and sometimes it only lasts a few weeks, but sometimes, you know, like for me, it lasts like 27 years, but where we sort of, the bottom kind of drops out of our life. And you're like, a wilderness passage might be you're in jail, or you're dealing with an addiction, or you're on the street, or you're on the road, or you're just sort of, you know, you're just alienated from yourself. You're definitely lost. You know, you're alone. You're in some kind of a bad situation spiritually and emotionally. And I think that sort of thing happens when we're trying to live a life that's not in alignment with who we really are. Like if we're a writer that doesn't write, or a painter that doesn't paint, or if we're in the wrong profession, if we're following something that maybe our parents thought we should do, you know, or if we're in a political arena that's really not us, that we're, maybe we grew up in a subculture that valued, a certain spiritual view or religious view, and we're following it. But in our heart, it's really not us. We're doing it because we're trying to be true to our mom and our dad and our the subculture that we're in. But we're really estranged from ourselves, and that's why we sort of feel like we're in the wilderness. It's like, where the fuck are we? We're wandering, staggering around. And so that's my definition of what a wilderness passage is, and what we're seeking through the whole thing is to answer the question, who am I? What is my calling? Why am I here on this planet? So that's I'm sure we'll keep talking about this, Nick, but that's kind of the general aspect of what I mean by a wilderness passage.
So it's kind of like a hero's journey. It's a hero's journey.
It's exactly
going through the hero's journey. So is it something that only happens once in someone's life, or can somebody go through it more than one time? Can it be?
You go through it more than one time, unfortunately, as your life evolves. But and there are kind of smaller heroes passages, or heroes journeys, like, just as an example, and I'm sure you guys can totally relate to this. Every time you write a book, that's a hero's journey, and it's a wilderness passage, because you sort of move from the known to the unknown, right? You take on an assignment. You have an idea of this book that you want to write, and the reason you want to write it is because it's an unknown thing to you. You want to explore it, right? Something is calling you into that, and once you get into the process, if you're like me, you're immediately lost. You immediately enter the zone of self-doubt. It goes on for a long, long time in the process. And the question, the bigger wilderness passage would be asking, who am I? But the smaller one, let's say you're writing a book, is, what the fuck is this book? What am I trying to do here? Why did I ever take this on?
Yeah.
And of course, that's sort of a sub-genre of who am I? Because by the end of it, you realize, you look at it and you go, first of all, you say, where did that come from? Where did Gates of Fire come from for me? I don't know anything about it, but then I realized, oh, that's somehow part of who I am. So yeah, I do think, Nick, that there can be many. I mean, if you're Bruce Springsteen, it's every album you write, every that kind of thing. Or if you're an actor, it's every film or play that you do, or an actress. So yeah, I think as we evolve, we keep going through these wilderness passages.
It's almost like it's your the price you pay to dance with the muse.
Yes, great. That's very well put.
Gives you the legend of Bagger Vance. It gives you the profession. It gives you the virtues of war. And then you're inspired and you roll along with it, and you're like, this is amazing. And then at some point you have that dark night of the soul. It's like, oh my God, what am I? What is this? I should have been a plumber. Like, I should have
exactly
pick fruit.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But not everyone makes it. Just because they're on their hero's journey or they're going through the wilderness passage, there are casualties.
Yeah.
Some
absolutely
people don't make it. What are some examples? What does that look like when someone fails and doesn't make it?
I'm thinking of a friend of mine who's I hope he is not watching, who, I'm sure there's a million people like this, who really wanted to be an actor and gave up, came to this town, Tinseltown, Los Angeles, and for one reason or another, and of course this happens to probably 99% of the people who have that dream, he never made it, and so had to drop back to other professions that weren't really what he wanted to do, and so he's not not that he's a casualty, but his dream didn't come true. It's kind of like that song, Midnight Train to Georgia. You remember that song?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's leaving on that midnight train to Georgia. He had a dream, and he's going back to a simpler place and time. And I think that's sort of what happens to a lot of people. Not everybody's dream comes true, or if it does, it comes true maybe at a level lesser than you might have hoped it would come true at.
Well, what do you think is the main thing? It can't be just one thing, but what do you think the main thing is that keeps people from making it through? What causes the casualties more than anything else? I mean, is it resistance with a capital R, lack of self, belief in themselves? What do you think it is that keeps people from succeeding?
Great question, Nick. I think a lot of it's just is that it's a numbers game, right? Not everybody can play center field for the Yankees, and with all the best intentions in the world, not everybody can, wins the Nobel Prize or whatever. So you think about the guys we knew in high school who were incredible athletes, right? That we were just in awe of the shit they could do, and maybe they got the AA ball, and there were so many other great players, or you get injured or whatever. It's so I wouldn't put any blame on anybody, but I think it's a numbers game a lot of time. I think, Nick.
Okay. Do you think that the wilderness passage, much like the fool's cap method, can be some sort of a purification ritual for you that helps you determine whether or not maybe what you're pursuing is not what you should be pursuing?
I do. I think it's like nature's way of kicking your ass, or it's nature's way of answering the question for you, who am I?
Yeah.
Or what is my calling? And I think life just does that to you. Like you'll try one thing, it doesn't work. You adjust, you reconstitute, you should try another. And it doesn't work, But little by little, hopefully you get to where you're going. Did I tell? I'm trying to remember if I told you this story about the son of a friend of mine who became a Marine and then a hospital administrator. Did I tell you this story?
No.
Well, this is kind of interesting. A true story and a classic example of this sort of stuff. Son of a friend of mine, and he's now like maybe 35 years old or something like that. First thing he did out of high school, he joined the Marine Corps. And he was in for like 6 years. He did a couple of tours, that kind of thing. And then he came back and he said, this isn't for me. I don't really, I don't want to be doing something that's hurting people, So he decided that he wanted to go into the medical field. And so his family is education is very valued in his family. So he went back to UCLA or something like that and became a hospital administrator, good thing, an MBA or whatever the hell it was, and went to work in a hospital and was doing very, very well. And he felt but he still felt, this is not for me. I'm not what I'm too divorced from the people that are in pain, from the patients, from the people. He says, I want to. And so he dropped out of that and he went to nursing school and he became a nurse. And in that, he didn't become a doctor, he became a nurse. And there he sort of found his calling. And he said, he finally realized, what I want to be in the room with the person that's suffering and the person that's afraid. I want to be able to put my hands on them and, take their fear away from them. And if you think about it, I know I'm blathering on here, you guys, but
this is great.
He was sort of on the track all the time. When he enlisted in the Marine Corps, it showed that he was more interested in a life of service than a life of making money, right? So, and then when he became a hospital administrator, it showed that he wanted to be in the healing world. He somehow wanted to ease people's pain. But he still wasn't quite on the track that where his real heart was, because he wasn't in the room with the suffering patient. And then he finally adjusted. So now if you sort of look back, you go, oh, well, he was on target all the time. He just was getting a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. So I think that's sort of, you could call that a wilderness passage, Nick. You know, he was at each station, Marine Corps hospital administrator, he knew he was lost. He knew he wasn't really in doing the right thing, but it was sort of a metaphor for the right thing. And then he finally got to it. And so he might not win the Nobel Prize, but he's happy. He's found his calling. He's doing what he wants to do.
That's fantastic.
Another odd thing about it, if you had met him at the moment he's at the recruiter's office signing up for the Marine Corps and said to him, you know what, Frank, you should be a nurse, he would say, get the fuck out of here, you know. But, you know, 15 years later, it was, thank God I finally found what it is I was meant to do.
Yeah. It's almost like you just got to hang in there, you know. And it's like I got a friend who was a forward observer in the Army, and he taught me about bracketing with the 105.
That's great, yeah.
And it's kind of like that, where like in artillery, you know, you get your grid, you hit over here, miss, make a fine adjustment, and then, or maybe like an overcorrection, then you hit over here and you sort of fine tune it, you know. And it's a game of inches, man. I mean, it's life, you know.
Well, that's what happened to me. I was in the music business for 20 years.
Yeah.
And did well and helped facilitate a lot of people, their dreams, what they wanted to do. I helped get them to the next step, and I enjoyed working with them for the clients. But my wife's family was very big on education. And they were like, is he ever going to get a real job? And here I've got 2 Grammys, and you know he's never going to get a real job. So I left, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to get a formal education. So I went and got my bachelor's. I got my law degree, passed the bar, and now I'm supposed to become a lawyer. And I realized that, you know, I couldn't be one of those. It was a lot of hurting other people. You weren't facilitating you were just facilitating their pocketbook and not necessarily them. So I took 15 years to do all that, and then at the end to realize that wasn't for me. And now I'm just at 52. I bought all my gear back, and I'm just starting back in where I started, because like you said, you know, if you're not doing what you were put on this planet to do, it's going to eat you alive. It's going to eat you alive. And I didn't want my third, you know, cycle of life be spent looking back. You know, I wanted to give it another shot.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. 20 on, 15 off, and now
get you another 20.
Did that 15 off feel like a wilderness passage for you, BJ?
Oh dear Lord, that's the only reason I said that. I mean, the whole time I'm thinking, I mean, I knew after about the 3rd year of law school I was going to be a lawyer, but you know, my wife's family, who I love and adore and respect, they're, you know, in the medical field. You know, I really felt like I had to do it for them. They were expecting it. They were expecting her to be someone who's educated and so on. So I did it. And for 15 years, I was basically miserable, but I gave my word to do it. And so I hung in there and I did it.
And you finished.
And I finished.
Yeah,
but then to everyone's surprise and utter disappointment, I decided I would go back to, and my wife is wonderful, so was fine, but I decided to give it all up and go back.
Steve, okay, so I got to course correct BJ here a little bit, because he says to everyone's utter disappointment. I will tell you right now, we know that BJ probably could have been a lawyer, you know, a successful lawyer in one field or another if he wanted to. But when we all found out, I mean, Nick and I used to talk about it all the time, but we found out that he was going back to music, we were overjoyed.
Yep.
It was like watching a fish flop off the dock back into the water.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
20 years of writing, and then you go 15 years without writing anything.
Yeah.
You realize what you're there's a hole that's bored inside you. And you got to fill it with something quick, some kind of creative, you know, effort, writing, whatever. So,
Uncle Steve, I got a question for you. How does somebody know if they're on their wilderness passage? How does someone come to that realization?
I'm sorry, what was the last?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. How does someone come to that realization?
I mean, I think you feel in every fiber of your body that you're in pain. You know, something is not right, you're walking into that office each morning and you're going, well, what am I doing here, and so I think you really feel it in your bones, and it gets worse and worse over time.
Yeah. That's the truth.
That's awesome.
That's the truth. Preach, brother, preach.
Can I ask another one? I don't mean to hog all the questions. I know you got
That's
some.
okay. I only have one other question about the wilderness passage, but Nick's questions are so much better than mine that I knew to take a back seat.
Yeah, that's really true,
please.
John. Yeah.
This will be my last question about the wilderness passage. Then later on, I have one last one for you. Different topic, though. You talked about how you were tempted to pull the pin.
Uh-huh.
Which is in government cheese. Basically, how two trains are joined together, you can decouple them by pulling the pin. It's kind of like giving up.
Yes,
giving up.
Quitting, yeah.
And if it hadn't been for a fellow fruit picker named John, who knew that you knew that you were supposed to be writing and finishing this journey, that you would have given up if it hadn't been for John. How important is it for someone to find, like their John who won't let them pull the pin? Is it possible to go it alone? Or do we have to have that other person, that what is it called? Dyad?
Yeah, dyad. Yeah.
I think it is possible to go it alone, but I think in real life we have, we have mentors, we have friends, we have brothers, comrades in arms that will, and they don't have to be, the same sex, it can be, female if you're a guy and vice versa. That I think if we had a lot of people here, like if you go to an AA meeting and you hear people kind of tell their story, there almost always is another person, that is there for them at the moment, at a crucial moment, and keeps them on the right track. I mean, that's kind of what life is about, right? But let me just throw in one last thing here, Nick, just as we're one of the videos a few of the videos that I was doing about the wilderness passage talks about Homer's Odyssey, the story of Odysseus, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that is sort of the classic, not just the classic hero's journey, but a classic wilderness passage, where Odysseus is trying to get home from the Trojan War, and it's only a few months, but it takes him 10 years because he's in the wilderness, he's the Cyclops with his men, he's with the Circe who turns his men into swine, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line of the whole thing, of the Odyssey and of all wilderness passages, I think, and all heroes' journeys, is it's about a journey home. And Odysseus does get back to Ithaca, to his home at the end. And when I say home, I really mean who we really are. It doesn't necessarily have to literally be Nashville or wherever, but we finally get home to, like the story I told you about the guy who became a nurse. That's like he was now in who he really was. So a wilderness passage is always, I think, about a journey home, a journey back to who we really are, if we succeed in that passage.
Sorry, I was thinking about how much I love those videos I was watching today. I remember that specific one too. So, okay, one of the things I was actually really surprised about this. You expressed a lot of appreciation for the Iliad and the Odyssey, and also you expressed a lot of appreciation for the King James Bible, for the beauty of its poetry, which I think we would all attest to as really moving.
Yeah.
And you talk about Jesus, literally being in the wilderness.
Yeah,
Garden
exactly.
of Gethsemane.
With the devil, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, probably the most poignant and profound of like all wilderness passages.
Yeah.
Short of Moses in the desert, which you also talked about. I was wondering though, as I was watching this, and maybe you've spoken about it, so forgive me if I'm retreading. Even before that, Jesus spent there's 18 years of silence from the time when he's a child to the time when he comes on the scene for his ministry.
Yeah, about that, yeah.
And no one really knows what to do with that. I mean, we're all three of us are Christians. We've all grown up in the church. Everybody has a theory. No one really knows. But one of the theories, tentative, is that like he kind of may have been going through his own wilderness passage in that time of, maybe the human side of him was discovering, or accepting the mantle that he had to, partake in. Who knows? But I look at Moses and the Israelites, 40 years in the desert. I look at Jesus, that 18-year window, and then the Garden of Gethsemane. And I look at my own life, and I wonder, is the wilderness journey, or is the wilderness passage a necessary part of your journey to be the best version of yourself? Or can it be avoided with wisdom, or should it be avoided?
That's a great question. I mean, it does seem to be necessary. If you just look at empirically, the friends we have, people we know, stories from, of other people, it does seem to. Although I suppose with enough wisdom, like if we were working with Carl Jung as our therapist, we might be able to answer that question, who am I, via, pure insight, and exploration of our unconscious. But even then, I think, let's say you could do it with therapy, with the talking cure. Even then, I think there probably comes a moment in therapy when you either break down completely in tears, or you have a fist fight with your therapist, or,
Yep.
you do have some kind of moment that isn't entirely in the intellect, that somehow goes really deep. Like in one of those videos, I think I talked about one of my favorite writers, Lawrence Vanderpost, a South African writer, and he has this theory that no change really happens with us unless it's accompanied by a fever, which is a really interesting thought. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's like the brain has to kind of cook a little bit for something to stick.
Yeah.
And like, if you go back to what I was saying about if you're listening in on an AA meeting, everybody seems to have those moments, you think, oh, I can handle my drinking. And then you come home and you find the locks have all been changed. Your wife and kids are gone, and you go, what?
What the hell just happened here?
And then that moment, your brain starts to cook in that moment, and you actually change and say, yeah, I gotta make some changes in my life here.
Yeah. Well, they talk about, I was thinking about AA earlier when watching those videos, and they talk about rock bottom, and you do, it's almost like, and I wonder if you have to hit rock bottom in order to take ownership. Like we talk about it in our Christian walk all the time of like, it's almost like you're not really a fully formed Christian until you've had your dark night of the soul, to where you no longer live the religion of your father. You live the religion that you have chosen with your, does that make sense? Like that ownership?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you sort of hate to say, oh, you have to do that, but it does seem empirically to be true. If we look at ourselves and we look at people we know, there does seem to be that need, that kind of that all is lost moment somewhere,
The all is lost moment. Yeah, exactly.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that okay? Yeah. Talking about you coming home and the house is locked, and you just had this thing, and now there's consequences have developed. Do you think that finding yourself or who you were truly meant to be, if it comes with consequences, are the consequences ever so great that you shouldn't do that?
That's a great question.
How do you think consequences weave into all of that?
I think it always does come with consequences, right? There's always something you have to give up, and it may be people, it may be your own children, maybe your spouse, it may be, you may be a Navy SEAL and you have to leave the teams, something like that. I do think it does come. I mean, Jesus had consequences, right? It does seem like when you find that real self, things have to be left behind. They just have to be, because you're coming out of a less than authentic self, right? Like you in law school. There probably were people, teachers and fellow students and people in your family that really had put a lot of hope in you being a lawyer. And at some point you had to say, hey, I'm sorry, but you had to do it. Otherwise,
you're right.
You would have been a casualty.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. It's sort of like exercising a healthy no, I guess.
Yeah. I'm not so good at that.
Steve, were you inspired to take on this wilderness passage journey for all of us after writing Government Cheese?
Yeah, I mean, that's like I really was I had a kind of a mercenary motivation at the start. I thought, well, what can I do that would promote Government Cheese? Because that book, that memoir, is really about my wilderness passage. So, or my passage to become a writer. And I thought, well, why don't I do a video series about this is what it's about. Of course, it didn't work out because I could never figure out how to sell the book or promote it, without feeling like a real asshole. So I just never said anything, and it didn't work at all. But it was, but that's how that whole concept of the wilderness passage came to be. Yeah.
But Government Cheese ends on a kind of a high note, because it ends with the legend of Bagger Vance being picked up, and it sort of is like getting about as high on the top of the mountain as a writer can get. So it still gives hope. It made people, Government Cheese made at least me feel not so self-loathing and isolated and alone from my own failures, of just knowing, that like, dude, other people go through stuff like this too. You're not the only one, and like, it can still be okay, and dude,
that's good to hear, Jonathan. That's what I was hoping, that it would encourage people a little bit.
Mission accomplished, baby.
Yeah, mission accomplished. And I will say, since our last time we interviewed you back in May, that interview with you inspired me to actually finish a book.
And
great. I did, and I finished
it. Send me a check.
I have proof copies here. We're in the post-production phase of things now. It's my first nonfiction. I've never done a nonfiction before, and wanted to say thank you.
Hey,
your message.
Tell us about the book, Nick. What is the book about?
Tell us about the book, Nick.
There's this groundbreaking new book.
Oh,
here it is.
Oh, what do you know?
Classic. What about Bob moment?
It's small. It's small. It's just a nonfiction, but it's called Unplugging Babel. It is a manifesto against AI, smart technology, and social media.
Ooh.
Wow! Congratulations.
Thank you. It's from
Will you send me a copy?
Oh, of course.
Okay, please.
Absolutely. But I had gone through this whole kind of a wilderness passage. It was during Lent that I was going through all of this kind of self-discovery, and I was journaling and writing like crazy. And then after we interviewed you, I thought, you know what, I think I've written a book, or the beginnings of one, and I think this needs to be done. And there was an aching in me to get it done. And anyway, just recently finished it, and we're in the last little bits of it.
Hey, great! Congratulations, Nick. That is great.
That to say thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for that.
All right,
great interview.
I'm proud of you. That's great.
Thank you.
Now on to the next one.
Yeah, exactly right. I was actually making notes today about a follow-up.
Ah,
yeah,
outstanding.
Nick. Good for you.
I do have a question for you related to AI because I saw a post that you did the other day where you were speaking to the writers that are on strike, the Writers Guild writers that are on strike,
Oh,
and
yeah.
actors too, encouraging them to. Now's a great time to keep writing, keep going. In light of the strike, and that post, has your opinion about how AI has impacted writing and writers in the market, has it changed at all over the past several months, or are you still not threatened?
I'm still sort of deliberately avoiding thinking about AI.
Okay. Thanks
I
for
think
forcing it, Nick.
my instinct tells me that it's the devil, and
That's exactly right.
I at least as I've heard people say, hey, it's just another technology. We need to learn how to use it. It can be a tool. It's no worse than, the telephone or something like that. And I may be wrong about this, but I think it is worse than the telephone. And for one thing, I mean, writing is about this human soul.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's
right.
no way that when artificial intelligence can finally have a soul, it's sort of like Blade Runner 2049 was really about that, right? Oh my God, the replicants actually have a soul. They can reproduce. Now that's cool if that were true, but I think it doesn't have a soul, and I can't believe that everything I've read, at least, that's been produced by AI, it just is bullshit and totally derivative and lame as hell. I haven't seen anything that it's like watching a dog talk or something. It's like you're really amazed that a dog can talk, but you don't really want to hear what the dog has to say.
That's good.
I'm being unkind to dogs. I really should say like a rock talking or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, I could be wrong. Maybe it's a great thing, but I don't know. I think I got old just in time.
Hey, did you hear? Have you heard? You might be interested in this. There's a website called verifiedhuman.info. verifiedhuman.info. It's really cool because you can sign if you're an artist of any kind, you can sign up, and basically it's like a public registry of artists that that are saying, hey, the work I'm producing is verified human. And you can use their little like
verified
logo
organic produce.
yeah
non-GMO creative.
Yeah.
It's really cool. I heard about it through a college professor at Lee. She was talking about it, and I said, I got to check that out.
Verified human. We've come to that.
It's come to that.
That's right. Yeah.
We've come to that.
And I'm not surprised that I thought we'd be even farther down the path than we are now, but I'm a pessimist and a sensationalist. So
what do you guys think about AI? I mean, what does
I agree with you. It's the devil. I absolutely think it's the devil.
Yeah.
At the very least, it is a lazy, calculated, and economic replacement for human endeavor. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario is it could, for me as a spiritual person, as a Christian, it could literally be demonic. It could have a soul, and that soul is very not okay.
Yeah.
So the truth is probably somewhere in the middle between those two, But,
and you'll definitely get my fully formed opinion in my book, and I'm going to send you a copy for free.
Great.
Available on Amazon soon. Yeah. This is why he's more successful than me. So.
When AI finally says, "Take up the broken sword of our father," and then I'll believe.
It'll get the grammar wrong somehow, or it'll get a word wrong. It'll be like "struck down the darkness" or "struck down the darkness."
Well, we have a patron question that we don't want to miss.
Yeah. I know we're almost out of time, so right here at the end, Steve, I just wanted to ask you on behalf of J. Reese Bradley, another fantastic author and friend of ours. She's on our Patreon, and she has been watching Legend of Bagger Vance obsessively. She's seen it 3 times. She can't wait to read the book, and she wanted to ask you, how is the movie different from the book in a way that maybe really stands out for you? 1 or 2 examples, and then also, were you happy with the movie?
I was definitely not happy with the movie.
Spoken like a true
Uh, and but again, you can't really complain. I always say once you cash the check, you can't complain. But the
True.
book,
Oh, so
the book,
true.
I hope that anybody who's seen the movie reads the book, because the book is a lot more spiritual, quote unquote. The book is patterned after the Bhagavad Gita,
Yep.
the Hindu scripture, and I think when you see the movie, you don't get that at all. Movies always have to simplify things. They can't really do, even though the book itself is a really short book.
Yeah.
But let's just say there's a lot more to the book than there is to the movie.
Oh yeah.
And, I hope that she reads it.
She will.
But I'm glad that the movie was good for her.
Is Black Irish Books still a good place to find copies of? Because I know they were selling those special edition numbered editions of The Legend of
They might still have a few of them. I'm not sure. There was like a leather-bound edition that we brought out.
I bought one
there
for
would still
Nick.
be a few of those left.
Yeah, I have one of those in
Yeah.
the black box, and it's
Yeah.
it's beautiful. You signed it. It's great. I got it up there.
Yeah,
Ah.
I need to get like a couple more of those. Man, this is once again, Steve. This has been so much fun.
Great hanging out with you guys. With all three of the Goslings, are they
Yeah,
good?
yeah.
Goss
That's
brothers?
right, baby.
Did you have another question, BJ?
No, I didn't have another
Okay.
question. I didn't know about the Legend of Bagger Vance, so I'm over here freaking out.
It's
in my chair.
processing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
man, that's freaking out of this world.
That's how you
man.
know we're nerds, Uncle Steve. It's like, we know you for the books. We don't even know you for the movie. You know?
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, and you know what? Here's the thing. I was talking to my I recently reconnected with my best friend from high school, who is also a huge fan of yours, has been for as long as I have, also a writer, and a very good writer. And he's a cinephile as well. He loves movies. And I was hanging out with Will Piercy last night, and we were talking about stuff, and he was like, I told him, I was like, hey, we're interviewing, Uncle Steve tomorrow. You got any, anything you want me to ask for you? And he said, just tell him, and he meant it. He said, just tell him I genuinely love King Kong Lives. And he's not kidding. And he has good taste in movies. So,
Oh, how about that? Yeah.
Anyways, Uncle Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thanks, man. It's always great hanging out with you guys. And until next time, take up the broken sword of your father
That's
and
right.
strike down the darkness.
darkness.
All right.
Love you, Uncle Steve.
God bless you all. Great to see you.
You
See you,
too.
buddy. Take care.
Till next time.
Till next. Hey, if you guys have been enjoying this interview and you'd like to hear the rest of it, including some really down and dirty stuff that we're not allowed to say here on YouTube, head over to patreon.com/the Goslings. We'd love to have your support there and share exclusive content with you.
That's right. Keep it cool. And remember, these are interviews that strike down the dark.
They do indeed strike down the
right.
darkness. They strike down all the darkness.
That's right. Strike it down hard.
So hard.
So hard.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it.
Man,
Can you guys hear us okay?
oh my gosh. It is to have. So here's the thing. We didn't do what we normally do, where, at the end of the interview, especially with Stephen Pressfield, where we ask like, hey, do you have any words of wisdom, for our audience, any parting words of wisdom that would help them strike down the darkness. I chose to forego that because he came out of nowhere with
Our toast.
our mantra.
Yeah.
And dude, I was so like,
was
I got a little misty watching it
Did you?
just now. Dude, it's mind blowing, It's these interviews with Stephen Pressfield, they get better and better. The old ones are still awesome. Everybody should go watch our interviews with Stephen Pressfield if you're a creative or if you're just like feeling a little stuck, man. It's great therapy, whether you're creative or not. And he is so incredibly generous with his time. We're so honored His girlfriend Diana helps him sort of set all this stuff up.
Yep.
And accommodates, he accommodates us. He spends time with us once a quarter, and dude, it's the coolest thing in the world,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
It honestly is just like mind blowing. And every time we talk to him, we talk about such cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
yeah,
Agreed.
we're very honored.
If you would tell people about Le Patreon.
Yeah. So we have a Patreon, and most of the people in the chat, actually, for the live chat of this episode, are on the Patreon. We have a handful of different tiers with different benefits that you get from those. The primary benefit that you get is exclusive content.
Yep.
You get access to the full interview, and we only had Steve for usually an hour, give or take. But I think probably for this one, 25, maybe 30 minutes
Of exclusive.
of exclusive material with him, where we talked about, crossing the Rubicon, and in reference to one of his other books called The Profession, which is very good, and how timelessly relevant that book seems to be, even though it's a near future novel. And so anyways, with all of our interviews, with all of our shows, that are pre-recorded like this, we do exclusive content where we talk about all the things that YouTube would give us channel strikes for, and we know this because we've received channel strikes in the past. So the Patreon is a good way for you to support the channel if you want to, and if you can afford it, and we greatly appreciate it, because all that money that comes into the channel through the Patreon goes right back into the channel. So we have a ring light now, we have like a different table set up, we've new keyboard, like we reinvest all that stuff. It's great. And it's a cool community, and everybody seems to get along. A lot of those people wind up in the live chat, and we always enjoy having new people come into the mix. And but the big benefit, aside from there's discounts on merch and all sorts of stuff, but what you really get, the juice, the meat of the Patreon, the jour is the du jour is really the exclusive content, which usually ranges about at least usually half an hour.
At least half an hour of content.
And we've sometimes gotten close to an hour's worth of content, with Gary Wayne and some of our other guests. So it's worth checking out. You can scan the QR code, or you can go to patreon.com/the Gosslings, and you'll be able to find it. We highly recommend everybody check it out, not just because it supports our channel and give us money or any of that, but the real thing is because you will get gems of exclusive content that we wish we could figure out a way to get that information out, but YouTube genuinely won't let us talk about some of that stuff. And some of it's really, really good and really important for people to hear, but it's a way for us to protect the channel.
That's right.
So so it's a great thing. And we designed all those tiers with all those discounts, whether it's signed copies of our novels, discounts on merchandise, exclusive content, to where even exclusive apparel that we designed just for the Patreon. We design all that stuff so that if we were in your guys' shoes, and we were on the other side of the equation, would this be worth $10, $20, $50, something like that? Or if you just want to support the channel, $5 a month, you get access to the monthly calendar of guests that we have coming out. So
I want to give Mike Fisher a quick shout out for the super chat. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
This might be loud. I hope that's not too loud.
Not bad.
It's all for you, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah,
Really
thanks,
appreciate
man.
the support, man.
He says, awesome interview with Uncle Steve, Goss Bros. Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Thank you, sir.
Mike Fisher is the owner of Giordani Jovanovic hair and skincare products. He's our sponsor, and we really, really appreciate it. And Mike is always there for us, man. He's a great guy, and super cool. Cool in ways that I can't really talk about. Yeah.
Well, you can on the Patreon.
I can on the Patreon. Yeah.
Awesome. Tell people about your book.
Oh, yeah. So I wrote a 7-novel series about the wars between the angels called Heavenly Realms by Jonathan Goss. It is Christian angelic fantasy fiction. It's kind of like The Wheel of Time or Lord of the Rings, Gladiator, Braveheart. It's written for fighting age males, but I've noticed a lot of different people seem to enjoy it. It is biblically based, but it is still fiction. Fictional characters. fictional characters.
Characters.
You know, you have to thank Ben Affleck for that from Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Shout out to Will on that. So, anyways, 6 of the 7 novels have been published on Amazon, available in ebook, paperback, and most of them are available in audiobook. Highly recommend you check out the audiobook versions narrated by Adam Burrell. He's our narrator, and he does a fantastic job. He sounds like Alan Rickman, better known as Snape, or the Sheriff of Nottingham, if you are old like
Old
us.
school.
Yeah. So normally what Nick and I like to do is we like to read an excerpt from one of our books. I will read from the 5th book in the series, Wayfarers. Up on your screen right now is a QR code for Heavenly Realms Empyrean Falling. That is book 1 of the series. That is about the rebellion of Lucifer in heaven and the fall of the angels and the war in heaven that takes place, where like Michael the archangel is the main hero and Gabriel is his brother, and his eldest brother Lucifer turns into Satan and leads the 1/3 in a revolt. And that sort of like kicks everything off. And then every book after that takes place in a different time period, with recurring characters throughout the series, and friends become enemies, enemies become friends. Everybody learns something. So the 5th book that I'm going to read is, in a way, it's my own wilderness book. Oh, someone scanned the QR code. Thank you, whoever that is.
Fantastic.
I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
The 5th book in the series is called Wayfarers, and Wayfarers is about a seraph who joins an elite legion of special operations, reconnaissance, and interdiction angels fighting against the fallen on Earth, and all of their many travels that they go through. And really, the reason it's called Wayfarers is because they basically become a legion of angels that sometimes travels through time in order to protect the lineage that would usher in Jesus. And it's a lot of fun. It was really cool. But this book took me probably 10 or 12 years to write. I had to basically take a 10-year hiatus from this book because I was not ready for this project when I did. So the chapter I'm going to read to you is, I actually forgot the name of it. It's called Exorcisms. And it is actually the scene where the Legion of Wayfarers, they link up, they travel through time, and then they link up with some other angels who are operating in the 1st century AD. And the Wayfarers, they don't really know where they are or what they're doing, but they're like, okay, I know we got to find the principal and we got to protect him. So then they link up with these other faithful angels, and they get caught up trying to protect this principal. They always call him the principal, whether it's Abraham, whether it's Moses, whoever the guy is who's going to usher in. And they don't know who this carpenter is, but they're starting to suspect that, like, maybe this is the one, And so there's this great moment where they follow Jesus and his disciples to Gadarene, across the Galilee. And so anyways, and they see this as Jesus lands on he encounters the demoniac, the Gadarene demoniac. And so anyways, they're about to encounter. Oh, and thank you, Chris. $5 super chat from Chris. He says, let's see, wait for it to pop up here. For $5, he says, gotta say, Goss Bros, I strike down the darkness more after being led here by other warriors. Man, Chris, that's awesome. We really appreciate you, Chris, because you've stuck with us through some turbulent times on the Gosslings.
Yes.
And I really appreciate your fidelity. It means a lot, man. Thank you. Okay, let's see. The narrator's name is Althaliel. He says, my heart sinks. He says, we haven't fought over leagues and centuries to protect 2 principles of the way, sacrificed friends and comrades, and traveled across time and space to fail now, I hear myself say. Not through inaction. If we fail because we tried. Captain, ideas? Fine, Lantheron growls. But I do this under protest. He begins spitting orders. First Sergeant, take your angels and go right. I'll take the left. Commander, take your Wayfarers and go up the middle. Strike as fast as you can. We'll hit them hard on the wings. What's the real plan? Shiranon asks, unsheathing his sword. Lantheron has no answer at first. He just shrugs his shoulders and shakes his head in befuddlement at the sheer multitude of demons flooding out from the tombs as the two crazed men flog their way towards the anomalous principal. Die fighting, I guess. See you in the fires. I hear the hopelessness in his voice and bolster myself. The principal has to be protected, he reaffirms. Let's get to work, Halos. We charge in. I set my wayfarers in a high-altitude arc, swirling down on the enemy throngs with our lances aimed for the first rank. Our curving flight will bring us right onto their backs. It's my hope to catch them unawares and let the confusion stall their whole line. Lantheron's right. They won't go down easy. These are not like the other demons we have faced. I can smell the taint of the prince on them. How we are supposed to protect the principal from these? I'll never know. It strikes me that this is a sin. But what else are we to do? I rear back my lance arm and recoil for the strike as we get cubits from the foe. The anomalous principal flicks his wrist at us, and time stops. We freeze in place mid-flight. The demons cease their charge as well. I stare at them wide-eyed, not more than 2 meters from impact. The battle cry leaves my throat in a way that sounds impotent and embarrassing in its lonesome trailing off. I can breathe, but I cannot move. None of us can. We are in suspended animation, kept cogent and alive by forces well beyond our will or power. We haven't felt this kind of arresting catalepsy since the Battle of 1,000 Peaks, when the Empyrean was called down. We call it the kiss of the cosmos. You haven't fought over leagues and centuries to protect two principles of the way, sacrificed friends and comrades, and traveled across time and space to fail now, a familiar voice says in my mind. Not through wayward action. If you fail because you sinned. Blinding tears burst from my eyes. I know that voice. My sorrowful shame is matched only by my relief. There is catharsis in the forgiveness and redemption of God in the light of confession. Or in this case, the outing. My precious Hilthaliel, the voice says, how I have missed you. It occurs to me in that moment that the mercy of God's confounding of the languages at the Tower of Babel was yet another exhaustive example of Father's unending patience and enduring love for his children. He did that to sidestep the issue because otherwise he'd be faced with slaughtering humanity again. In his love for them, God spared our younger sibling by this smashing of their wicked temple. They suffered a mild, longer pain, spared of a final, more brutal and instant pain of being slain at the plinth. And he spared us too. Spared us the innobility of slaughtering our created brethren yet again in defense of his throne. For Nimrod's goal was, at Satan's whispered behest, to invade heaven and overthrow God. Personally, I think God knew we couldn't take on another insurrection like that. At least not so soon. Our Father was not going to stand by and watch yet another civil war break out between his sons over dominion of the lower realm. There you go, peeps.
There's your snippet.
Yeah.
Got to get you some. And that one's Wayfarers, and that's book 5.
Yep, book
in
5.
the Realm series.
There you go. You don't have to read all of these books to enjoy them. In fact, some of them you can kind of jump around with. This one covers the entire timeline from the Empyrean all the way up to the early 20th century. I wrote the book so that each book has closure. So you can read book 1, Empyrean Falling, like what's on your screen. Be like, you get to the end of it, you're like, yeah, I'm good, I'm done. You know, and each book after that is kind of like that. I didn't want to bait everybody into reading like the whole 7 novel series, unless you just wanted to. So I hope everybody enjoys it.
Yeah, they all have their own unique story arc.
Yeah, they do, and they all have closure, you know. But they're kind of like Harry Potter in that regard. There's like a story arc that takes place in there, but then at the end of it, you know. Yeah.
Don't say anything. I still have to watch the last movie with the kids. That's what we're doing next Friday, pizza movie night.
That's awesome. American Car says, I love it when Jay reads me a bedtime story. I'm down. I'm down for it. Yeah, bedtime stories with brother Jay.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Anyways, what about you, man? Talk about your book. You got something
Okay.
cool?
I do have something cool coming out. It'll be published by October 31st. It'll be published by Halloween. I have written a book called Unplugging Babel. Here's a proof copy. Unplugging Babel.
Nice.
It is a it is a biblical treatise of digital counterculture and a call to action for families and churches.
Yeah.
This book is about Christian digital counterculture, or you might say it's a book about digital. It's about counter digital culture, and it's about what's coming and how the beast system is before us. It already has some of its tentacles wrapped around us, and how we can free ourselves from some of that. I'll read you a little excerpt. It's 123 pages of humorous rant, but it also has. I actually dig into scripture quite a bit. I dig into the Beatitudes. I dig into the Proverbs. I dig into the Tower of Babel story, Genesis 11.
Oh yeah.
And it's you guys. I think you guys are really gonna like it. Here's just one quick paragraph. I'll read you one quick paragraph in the book. AI will make us beyond human. It will scale us. And isn't that what Nimrod and the citizens of Babel were after with the infamous tower?
Yeah.
They wanted to be their own gods. They wanted to access the divine, knock God from his throne, and be the masters of their own destinies. They didn't want to just remove God from his sovereign position. They wanted to be the masters of the universe. Today, big tech and the government seek to become the masters of the universe, and they're all Skeletor.
Did you really write that?
Yeah, I wrote that.
Oh, you did.
Yep.
Nice.
So there's a sample, small sample
That is
of
awesome.
how I go through this book.
Yeah.
But it'll be out soon. You can email me if you're interested. I can send you once I have it published. I'm going to publish it early. I'm going to get a bunch of author copies sent to me. I will send you a signed copy along with a pen. Where's the pen? Where's the hat? Oh, my hat's hanging up. I'll send you. I have some promotional pins that I'll send with it. But if you're interested, send us an email, thegoslingsgroup@gmail.com. I'll put your name on the list, and I will get you one before the holidays. For sure.
Do you have a link for any of your other books, like Henry Half Moon or anything?
I do. I think. Let me see. Let me find it.
It'd be a good idea to put your link to your Amazon page, even if it's through Henry Half Moon or the Travelers League series, just so people can go to your Amazon page and sort of follow you from there. And
It's a good idea. Here's add it here. Here is I'll put the timepiece up there.
Nice
You can see my other books for your youngins,
for your childrens.
for your chitlins. Thank you guys for hanging in there with us tonight.
Yeah, we appreciate. We're always honored whenever anybody joins us for a fireside chat with Uncle Steve, because Stephen Pressfield's interviews are gold.
Absolutely,
They are
solid gold.
worth everybody paying attention to and watching.
And the book you see up there on the screen, that's the Timepiece, book 1 of the Travelers League series. It is a hero's journey tale of a 10-year-old boy who's given a magic timepiece who has to travel through 12 different magical worlds, evading a wizard looking to steal that timepiece so he can take his revenge on the Travelers League, which is a guild of child heroes that have all made that same journey with a timepiece. It's a wild ride. It's fun. It's humorous. It is you could call it a middle grade urban fantasy. And it's super fun. I hope you enjoy it. But that's called The Travelers. It's for kids ages 8 to 12, so it's middle grade.
Yeah.
And there's a 5-book series with 3 prequels.
Yeah.
So it's actually an 8-book series that you
Yeah.
can check out on Amazon. You can scan that code.
It's kind of like the Lost Boys from Hook meets like the Boy Scouts meets like a little bit of like Wizard of Oz, or maybe like Harry Potter.
A
Like,
little bit.
it's got a cool mixed bag of different things in it. I think you're doing the Lord's work, because the timepiece is analog clock technology, and nowadays no kid knows how to read a clock.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah. So if you want your children
That's
to
part
know
of
how
the
to tell time, then
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, you kind of tie it into anti-digital fetish. I appreciate you.
See,
doing that.
there's
That's
a
nice.
theme running
Sure,
through.
right, man.
And that theme is not in any way, shape, or form contrived because we're not smart enough to make it contrived. It is authentic, let me tell you.
Well, guys, we've really enjoyed you being with us tonight. Thank you so much for being here. As you can see, the stars in the background have gone off. That is our sign. We have to now go get sushi.
We do. Yeah.
And I think that's all we got.
Yeah. I want to thank everybody for being with us in the live chat. Chris said, Royal Rangers. Come on, Jay. And you know what? It probably is like the Royal Rangers. You're probably right, Chris. Yeah. Jay Reese Bradley was in the chat. Jay Reese Bradley is another middle grade fiction author. She writes really fun, cute books that are like Harry Potter, sort of.
Yep.
And she has her own channel, JRB Live, that people should go to. And she also conducts interviews with non-woke authors.
Yes.
So she's doing the Lord's work as well. We really like Jay. So we like all you guys, man. Thank you. Thank you for the generous support from Chris Caps and Mike Fisher. It's very sweet of you guys. We appreciate everybody watching. Next week, let's see. Are we airing what we recorded today?
Yes. Next week, we BJ's with us. Next week, we're airing our conversation about the recent debates, the Trump indictment and possible imprisonment.
Yeah.
The mugshot. And all things to come in the election season that is upon us. And the Patreon portion of that
It's really good.
is,
Yeah.
it would have gotten our channel not just a strike, but probably shut down
Yeah.
with the things that we talked
Yeah, it
about.
was 45 minutes of pure beast, anti-beast naughty talk.
Oh,
But it was fun too. We had a lot of
Yeah.
fun. We told some jokes. We laughed. We just hung out.
It was great.
We were supposed to interview Dr. Kardaras today about AI, but there was a scheduling conflict, so that one has been rescheduled further down. We're gonna lock in a date. It just sometimes these things happen.
Yeah, it just didn't work
You know.
out. Some last minute things popped up, so we have to reschedule with him. But we'll
Yeah.
get him.
Yep.
We'll get him here, and we'll have an amazing conversation with him. In the meantime, hang out with us next week at 6:00.
Yeah.
And hope you guys have a beautiful and blessed week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad to see you guys.
Until next time, I'm Jonathan,
I'm Nick,
and we are the Goslings. Go forth,
and strike down the darkness.
vertical butt.